Guys. Okay, so the other day we've been working on 1 and 2 step equations, so now we're gonna step it up a little bit. Now we're gonna work on multi-step. All right. Okay, pretty much if you follow these steps, you'll be good to go to solve any equation, no matter how difficult it may seem. Okay, step 1 says remove all grouping symbols, which means handle the parentheses first. After you do that, make sure you combine like terms. Then you want to make sure you have all of your variables on only one side of the equal sign. Then next, you're going to want to add or subtract your constant term, aka the number by itself. And then you're either going to have to divide or multiply by the reciprocal to get rid of the number that is the coefficient of your variable. Okay, if you need to go back to those steps whenever you're working through a problem, do so. But let's go ahead and jump into them and practice out those steps. Okay, first of all, I don't see any parentheses, so that's nice. I do see an equal sign, which tells me it's an equation, so I can solve it. So remember, I want you to put a line where that equal sign is. Okay, so I'm trying to get this x by itself. If I want this x by itself, there are two numbers that I need to get rid of. I need to get rid of that 2/3, and I need to get rid of that 6. So I know I need to get rid of this guy, and I know I need to get rid of this guy. So remember, I told y'all, whatever number is directly touching that x, let it stay put. So the first thing I want to get rid of is that 6. The second thing I want to get rid of is that 2/3. Okay, remember, to get rid of something, we do the opposite. So to get rid of a +6, I do the opposite, and I'm going to do -6. What I do on one side of that line, I make sure I do to the other. A +6 and a -6 are opposite, so those cancel. So that 2/3 x will drop down. Always put your equal sign on the line. On the other side, 12 minus 6 is 6. Okay, so we want this x by itself, which means I have to get rid of this 2/3. Well, to get rid of a fraction, we multiply, which is why I put the parentheses, by the reciprocal, the reflipical, we flip it. So we're going to multiply by 3/2. We have to remember what we do on one side, we have to do the same thing on the other. I know a fraction and its reciprocal cancel because I have a 2 on top and a 2 on bottom, so those will cancel. A 3 on top cancels the 3 on bottom. So the only thing we have left is that x. The x drops down. And on the other side, we take 6 times 3/2, which is going to come out to give us 9. Moving on. All right, cool. There are no parentheses, so we don't have to worry about that. There are no like terms, so we don't have to worry about that either. So I'm going to draw my line down on my equal sign. I look at my x. We're trying to get x by itself. So there's two numbers I need to get rid of. I know I need to get rid of this 1.2, and I need to get rid of this 4.3. So because this 4.3 is directly touching the x, we're going to save that. So this is the first thing we need to get rid of. This is the second thing. Okay, well, that 1.2 is a positive 1.2. So to get rid of something that's positive, you have to do the opposite. So negative or take away. So I'm just going to subtract 1.2. What I do on one side, I make sure I do the exact same thing on the other side. This positive 1.2 and this negative 1.2 cancel. So the only thing left over here is this 4.3x will drop down. You always put your equal sign on the line. And on the other side, we had 9.8 minus 1.2, which is going to give me 8.6. All right. So I want x by itself, so I still have to get rid of this 4.3. Remember, when a number and a variable touch, that means multiply. So to do the opposite of multiply, we divide. And we're going to divide by this 4.3 that we don't want. Don't forget, keep it balanced. What you do on one side of that line, do the exact same thing on the other. This 4.3 on top is going to cancel that 4.3 on the bottom. So the only thing we have left is that x that will drop down. Equal sign on your line. On the other side, we have 8.6 divided by 4.3, which comes out to give us 2. All right, well, we actually do have parentheses this time, so we're going to take care of that guy first. So I see my equal sign, I'm going to draw my line. Okay, this 6x out front, I'm going to go ahead and just drop him down for now. We want to handle the parentheses first. So in front of the parentheses, I have this negative 2 over 9, and I'm going to have to multiply it by both of these things on the inside of the parenthesis. So first I'm going to take negative 2 over 9, and I'm going to multiply it by 18x. Remember, don't be freaked out by fractions. You can totally type it into your calculator. Negative 2 over 9 times 18x comes out to be a negative 4. So I'm going to write it as minus 4. And I'm not going to forget my x. Now I'm going to take that negative 2 over 9 and I'm going to multiply it by negative 27. Negative 2 over 9 times negative 27 comes out to be a positive 6. My equal sign goes on the line, and we still have that 12 on the right-hand side. All right, so we handled our parentheses. So the next thing we want to look for are like terms. Well, I have 6x's here and negative 4x's here. So we combine, which means to add. 6 plus negative 4 comes out to give me 2, so we have 2x's. Then we look at our regular numbers. This is my only regular number, that plus 6, so it drops down. Our equal sign is on our line. And the only thing on the right-hand side is still that positive 12. Okay, so we're trying to get that x alone, which means I need to get rid of that 2 and I need to get rid of that 6. Since that 2 is directly touching the x, let's save it. So I want to get rid of plus 6 first. To get rid of a plus 6, we do the opposite. We're going to take away 6. What you do on one side of your line, you do on the other. A plus 6 and a minus 6 opposites cancel. So the only thing left on this side is that 2x, so I drop my 2x, put my equal sign on the line. 12 minus 6 is 6. Almost done. The only thing left to get rid of now is that 2, and notice that that 2 is touching the x. Remember, when they touch, that means multiply. So the opposite of multiply is divide, and I divide by that number out front. It's called the coefficient. What I do on one side, I do on the other. My 2 on top cancels my 2 on bottom. So the only thing left on the left-hand side is that x that drops down. Equal sign on our line. On the right-hand side, 6 divided by 2 is 3. Okay, so I see my equation. I know it's an equation because I see an equal sign, so I know I can solve it. I'm going to draw my line down from my equal sign. Okay, I see 2 different sets of parentheses. We're going to handle one at a time. Remember, when you have a negative outside the parentheses, it means to do the opposite of everything on the inside. So I'm going to treat this as the opposite of a positive one. So the opposite of a positive one is a negative 1. Then I'm going to do the opposite of a plus 7. The opposite of a plus 7x is a minus 7x. Okay, now I see my second set of parentheses, and in front of that I see a negative 6. So we're going to distribute, which means multiply by this negative 6. So I'm going to take this negative 6 and multiply it by a negative 7. Negative 6 times negative 7 is a positive 42. So put plus 42. And then I'm going to take this negative 6 and I'm going to multiply it by negative x. Negative 6 times a negative x. Well, I know a negative times a negative is a positive, so I'm going to write plus. 6 times x is just 6x. Put your equal sign on that line, and the only thing we have on the right side is that 36. All right, so we handled the parentheses. So now what we have to do is combine our like terms. So I'm going to highlight these negative 7x's, and I also have a positive 6x. Combine means to add. So negative 7 plus 6 is a negative 1. So I have negative 1x. And if you want to write it as negative 1x, go for it, you can. But remember that negative 1x is the same thing as just saying negative x. All right, so now I'm going to look at my regular numbers. So I see a negative 1 and I see a positive 42. So we add, combine those. Negative 1 plus 42 is a positive 41. Put my equal sign on the line. The only thing I have on the right side is 36. Okay, so I'm trying to get x by itself. So in order for x to be alone, I have to get rid of this negative and I have to get rid of this 41. So remember, what's directly touching your variable, leave it alone. So I'm going to leave this guy alone for now, and I'm going to get rid of plus 41. To get rid of a plus 41, we do the opposite. I'm going to take away 41. What I do on one side, I have to do on the other side of my line. This plus 41 and minus 41 are opposites, so they cancel. So the only thing left to drop down is this negative x. Equal sign on the line. On the right-hand side, 36 minus 41 is a negative 5. Okay, x is not completely alone. I need to get rid of that negative, so don't want a negative x, I want a positive x. So I want the opposite, really. So remember when I told y'all if you have a parenthesis with the negative out front, you just make everything opposite on the inside. So let's go ahead and do that. The opposite of a negative x is a positive x. Equal sign goes on the line. The opposite of a negative 5 is a positive 5. So if all you have to do is get rid of your negative, an easy way to do that is put the entire thing in parentheses and just multiply by another negative, because remember, this means just do the opposite. The opposite of a negative x is a positive x. The opposite of a negative 5 is a positive 5. All right, let's keep it moving. A word problem. A candy store sells 8-pound bags of mixed hazelnuts and cashews. If C pounds of cashews, so I know that C stands for cashews, P stands for the price of the bag can be found using the formula. And it gives me a nice, neat formula. It says if one bag is priced at $18.11, how many pounds of cashews does it contain? Okay, so anytime a problem gives you a formula, it's nice to rewrite it, because more than likely you're going to use it. That's why they gave it to you. So all we're doing is rewriting our equation. Make those decimals a little bigger. Okay, we already said that the P in this formula stands for the price, and we know that the C in this formula stands for the number of pounds of cashews. Well, an important piece of information it gave me is it told me the price was $18.11. So I know P, I know the price. So instead of P, I'm going to plug in $18.11. And then I can just rewrite the rest of the formula. Okay, so all I did, this is the formula it gave me. I just changed the P into 18.11 because it told me it was priced. P is priced at 18.11. Okay, so now what we're going to do is solve. I know I can solve it because I have an equal sign, so I draw my line. Okay, on my left-hand side, this is all I have, so let's go ahead and drop that down for now. On the right-hand side, I see parentheses, so I'm going to handle this part first. So this guy, this 2.59c, will just drop down for the time being. And now let's do the parentheses. So we're going to have to multiply. So in front of my parentheses is this positive 1.72. So I'm going to take that and multiply it by 8. 1.72 times 8 is going to give me a positive, so I write plus 13.76. Then I'm going to take this 1.72 and I'm going to multiply it by a negative c. Well, I know a positive times a negative is a negative, and 1.72 times c is just 1.72c. You put those together. All right, so we multiplied. So we're done with the parentheses. So now what we need to do is see if we can combine like terms. On the left-hand side, all we have is that 18.11 still, so let's drop that down. Equal sign on the line. But on the right-hand side, I see C's here, and I see C's here. So we add those together. So that's a 2.59 and a negative 1.72. So I add 2.59 plus negative 1.72 is going to come out to be 0.87, and those were my C's. And then we look for the regular numbers. The only regular number I see here is this guy right here. So that just drops down since there's nothing else to add to it. So plus 13.76. All right, we're looking good. So we're still trying to get C by itself, which means I need to get rid of this 0.87 and this 13.76. So notice this 0.87 is touching the C, so we're going to let them be for now and get rid of this 13.76 first. So to get rid of a plus, we do the opposite, so I'm going to subtract 13.76. What I do on one side, I do on the other. This plus 13.76 and this negative 13.76 cancels. So the only thing left on the right side is the 0.87C that's going to drop down. Always put your equal sign on the line. On the left-hand side, we had 18.11, subtract 13.76, and that's going to come out to be 4.35. All right, I'm going to shrink this down a little bit just because I'm running out of room. Okay, so we're still trying to get C by itself, so I need to get rid of this 0.87. Notice it's touching the C. Remember, when that happens, that means multiply, so the opposite of multiply is divide. And I'm going to divide by that 0.87 that I do not want. What I do on one side, I do on the other. So this 0.87 on top will cancel this 0.87 on bottom. So my C drops down on the right-hand side. We have our equal sign. And so we, on the left-hand side, we have 4.35 divided by 0.87, which is going to come out to be a perfect 5. So we have C equals 5, so let's remember what C stands for. C stands for the number of pounds of cashews. So out to the side in words, I'm going to actually write what we found. We know that if we spent $18.11, we got 5 pounds of cashews. It's always good to actually think out, what did we truly find? We answered the question, yeah. So understand, what does C mean? Well, we know that C stands for the pounds of cashews. So since C is 5, we know we got 5 pounds of cashews if we paid the price of $18.11. Okay, so now let's see what happens when we have our variables on both sides. So notice here's my equal sign, so I'm going to draw my line. Give me just a sec. And notice we have x's on the left and on the right. Okay, so this is going to be a little different, but very similar at the same time. Just before we try to get... let's just jump into it, probably be easier. Okay, so first we have this 14 out front, so it's just going to drop down. But we do have to handle these parentheses. Remember, out front we have a negative. Remember, when that happens, we think of it as the opposite. So the opposite of this positive x would be a negative x. The opposite of this plus 5 would be a minus 5. Equal sign on the line. Okay, so we took care of parentheses over here. All right, so parentheses on this side. So we're going to take 3 and multiply it by the x. 3 times x is 3x. Then we're going to take this 3 and multiply it by 9. I know 3 times 9 is a positive 27. And I can't forget this minus 10 that's tagged on the very end, so I'm just going to minus 10 at the end. Awesome, so we took care of parentheses. Done. Okay, the next thing we want to do is see if we have like terms on both sides. So first, let's look on the left side. I'm going to look for x's first. Those are my only x's, so I know that negative x will drop down. Okay, now I'm looking for regular numbers on that left-hand side. I see a 14 and I see a negative 5. So we're going to combine those, which means add. 14 plus negative 5 gives me a positive 9. Equal sign on our line. Okay, now we're going to look for like terms on the right-hand side. So I see 3 x's. There are no other x's, so those drop down. And now I'm going to look for my regular numbers. I see a positive 27 and I see a negative 10, so we need to combine those, which means add. 27 plus negative 10 is a positive 17. Okay, so before we do anything else now everything is combined on this side and combined on this side, what I want to do is make sure I only have x's on one side. So it doesn't matter, you could take your pick. We can get rid of this negative x, or we can get rid of these 3 x's. It does not matter, you will get the answer either way. Well, I'm going to choose to get rid of this negative x, because I know in order to get rid of something, you do the opposite. Well, the opposite of a negative x is to add an x, right? Opposite of a negative is a positive. And I like to add, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get rid of that negative x by adding an x. What I do on one side of my line, I make sure I do on the other side as well. But since it's an x, keep it lined up under your other x's. A negative x and a positive x cancel. So the only thing left on the left-hand side is that 9. Equal sign on the line. We had 3 x's and we added another x, so that's a total of 4 x's now. And this plus 17 over here will just drop down. Okay, so we want x by itself, so I need to get rid of this 4 and this 17. Since that 4 is touching the x, remember, leave it for now. So to get rid of a plus 17, we're going to take away 17 from both sides. A plus 17 and a minus 17 cancel. So the only thing left on the right hand is that 4x will drop down. Equal sign on the line. 9 minus 17 is a negative 8. Almost done. We need to get rid of this 4. Well, notice that 4 is touching the x. Remember, when the letter and a number touch, that means multiply. So the opposite of multiply is divide. And we're going to divide by that coefficient of 4 that we do not want. What I do on one side of the line, I make sure to do the other. This 4 on top cancels that 4 on bottom, so that x on the right-hand side drops down. Put your equal sign. On the left hand, we have negative 8 divided by 4, which is a negative 2. All right, so we have our answer. And the proper way to write this was just to put x equals negative 2. All right, so I see x's on both sides of the equation, and that's okay. We'll handle that here in a second. It is an equation because I see the equal sign, so we're going to draw our line. On this left-hand side, I see parentheses, so I'm going to take care of that. 2 times x is 2x. Then 2 times negative 3 is a negative 6. So we took care of the parentheses. There are no parentheses on this side for now. Let's drop it down. Okay, we always look for like terms after we handle parentheses, right? These are not like terms, so I can't do anything on this side. These are not like terms, and because this one has an x and this one does not. So they're not alike, so we can't add them up. All right, so now what I want to do is make sure I have all my x's on one side. So remember, it doesn't matter. I can get rid of these 2 x's, or I can get rid of these 2 x's. Okay, I'm going to choose to get rid of these. Well, that's a positive 2x, so to get rid of something that's positive, you do the opposite. So which means I'm going to subtract 2x. What I do on one side of the line, I have to do on the other. So if I have to take away 2 x's from both sides. Keep x's lined up under x's. Okay, so I have a positive 2x and a minus 2x. Those are opposite, so that cancels. So the only thing left on the right-hand side of that positive 5 that's going to drop down. Equal sign on the line. Okay, but notice over here, we had a positive 2x and a negative 2x. Aren't those also opposites? So those would also cancel. So the only thing left on the left-hand side is that negative 6. Okay, so we have that negative 6 is equal to 5. That is not true. Negative 6 does not equal 5. So that's not true. So whenever that happens, if you end up solving something and it comes out to be a not true statement, everybody knows that negative 6 does not equal 5. That is not true. If that happens, your final answer will be no solution. That means no number that we plug in for x will work. No solution is our final answer. So remember, you write no solution if it comes out to be not true. Yeah, that ain't right. Not true. Okay, I know it's an equation because I see an equal sign, so I draw my line. I see parentheses on both sides, so let's go ahead and take care of that. I need to take this 0.3 and multiply it by 12x. 0.3 times 12x is 3.6x. Then I take that 0.3 and I'm going to multiply it by negative 16. That gives me a negative 4.8. Put your equal sign on the line. All right, so we handle parentheses on the left side. Now let's do it on the right. So on the right-hand side, I need to take that 0.4 and multiply it by 12. That's going to give me a positive 4.8. Then I'm going to take that 0.4 and I'm going to multiply it by negative 3x. That's going to give me a negative 1.2, and don't forget to put your x. All right, so we handle parentheses. So next thing we always check for is, can we combine any like terms? So I look at the left-hand side. This has an x, this does not. So these are not like terms I can't combine. Look on the right side. This one does not have an x, this one does. So those are not like terms I can't combine. All right, so the next thing I need to worry about is making sure I have all x's on the same side. So remember, it does not matter. You can choose to get rid of these 3.6x's, or you can choose to get rid of these negative 1.2x's. I'm going to choose to get rid of the negative because the opposite of a negative is a positive, and I like to add. So I'm going to add 1.2x to both sides. Remember, keep x's, keep x's lined up under other x's. Okay, so I know this minus 1.2x and this positive 1.2x's cancel. So the only thing left on the right-hand side that's going to drop down is that 4.8. Keep your equal sign on your line. On the left-hand side, we had 3.6x's. We added 1.2x's, so that's going to give me a total of 4.8x's. And then I can't forget about this minus 4.8, and that will just drop on down. Okay, so we're still trying to get this x by itself, so I need to get rid of this 4.8 and this 4.8. Well, this 4.8 is the one that's touching the x, so I'm going to save this guy for now, and I'm going to get rid of this minus 4.8 first. Well, to get rid of a minus, we do the opposite, so I'm going to add 4.8. What I do on one side, make sure you do it on the other side of your line. A minus 4.8 and a plus 4.8 cancel. So the only thing left on the left-hand side is the 4.8x. That will drop on down. Equal sign on your line. On the right-hand side, we had 4.8. Add another 4.8. That's going to give us a total of 9.6. Okay, so we're still trying to get x by itself. The only thing that's keeping x from being alone is this 4.8 out in front of it. So remember, when a number and a letter touches, that means multiply. So the opposite of multiply is divide. And we're going to divide by that coefficient, which is that 4.8 out front. What I do on one side, we remember to do to the other. This 4.8 cancels out that 4.8 on bottom. So the only thing left is this x that will drop. Equals. On that right-hand side, we have 9.6 divided by 4.8, which comes out to give us 2. All right, let's keep it going. All right, I know this is an equation because I see an equal sign, so I draw my line. All right, parentheses on both sides, so we're going to take care of that. First, I'm going to take that 2/3, and I'm going to multiply it by 24r. 2/3 times 24r is 16r. Now I take that 2/3 and I'm going to multiply it by -9. 2/3 times -9 comes out to be a -6. So I'm going to write minus 6 equals. On the right-hand side, I'm going to take this 2 and multiply it by 8r. 2 times 8r is 16r. Now I'm going to take this 2 and multiply it by that negative 3. 2 times negative 3 is a negative 6. I'm going to write minus 6. Next, we always try to compare combine our like terms. So I look on the left. This one has an r, this one does not, so I can't combine. This one has an r, this one does not, so I can't combine. So next step is we want to try to make sure that we only have r's on one side, which means I need to either get rid of these 16 r's or get rid of these 16 r's. It does not matter. So I'm going to choose this guy. That's a positive 16r, so to get rid of it, I'm going to subtract 16r. What I do on one side, I do on the other. I don't like the way that looks. Okay. So this is a positive 16r, that's a negative 16r, so those cancel. So the only thing left to drop down is this negative 6. Equal on the line. Well, if you look over here, I had a positive 16r and a negative 16r. So those are also opposites, so those cancel. So the only thing left to drop down is this negative 6. Well, I have negative 6 is equal to negative 6. Well, yeah, that's true. Okay, so this is kind of like that situation we did earlier. This one. Well, when it was not true, we put no solution. Well, when it's true, what do we write? You can write two options. You need to know both because it could be either one. If it turns out to be true, your answer can be called infinite solutions. Or you can also call it all real numbers. And the symbol for all real numbers is like an R with like a double line. So if it's true, your answer is infinite solution. Any number can work. But if it comes out to be false, you know it's no solution. And you could have caught it right away, right here at this step. 16r minus 6 equals 16r minus 6. It's equal to the same thing, yes. So you could have caught it up here that it was true. But I could continue to work it all the way out. Okay, we have a 12-inch candle and an 18-inch candle. They're both lit at 6 p.m. The 12-inch candle burns 0.5 inches every hour. The 18-inch candle burns 2 inches every hour. At what time will the two candles be the same height? So we're going to write an equation and then solve it. Okay, so we have two different things. So we have the 12-inch candle, so I'm going to write 12-inch right here. And we have an 18-inch candle. And the problem is that we want to know when they're going to be the same height. Well, same is equal, so I'm going to put equal sign between them. I want them to be equal. Well, let's talk about the 12-inch candle. Well, we're lighting this candle, and what's happening to it? It's burning. So we know the candle is going to start at 12 inches tall. And if it's burning, its height is going to get smaller, so I need to subtract. Well, I know that that 12-inch candle is burning 0.5 inches every hour. So I know it's going to be 12 inches and it's going to go down by 0.5 inches every hour. So I know I need to take away 0.5 every hour. So it starts at a height of 12 and it goes down by 0.5 every hour. All right, let's talk about the 18-inch candle. Well, the 18-inch candle starts at 18 inches, but it's going to burn 2 inches every hour. So the candle starts at a height of 18, and it's burning, so I know it's going down by 2 inches every hour. So by 2 inches every hour. All right, so now that we have the equation set up, we're going to solve. There are no parentheses, so let's see if we can combine like terms. This has an h, this does not, so those are not like terms, can't do it. On the right-hand side, this has an h, this one does not. These are not like terms, so I can't do it. So the next thing I need to focus on is I have h's on both sides. I can't have that, so I need to pick one of them to get rid of. It does not matter which of these h's I get rid of. I'm going to choose to get rid of these. So to get rid of a minus 2h, we do the opposite. I'm going to add 2 h's. What I do on one side, I do on the other. Keep your h's lined up. So a minus 2h and a plus 2h cancel. So the only thing left is this 18 that's going to drop down on the right-hand side. Equal on the line. I have this 12 out front that I'm not doing anything to, so that 12 falls down. I had negative 0.5 H's and I'm adding 2. So negative 0.5 plus 2 is a positive 1.5. And those are my H's. Okay, so I'm trying to get H by itself, which means I need to get rid of this 12 and this 1.5. Notice the 1.5 is touching the H, so we're going to leave that guy alone for now. And I'm going to get rid of this 12. Well, notice this is a positive 12. So if you need to, put a little plus sign in front of it. That's a positive. So to get rid of a positive 12, you can do the opposite. So I'm going to take away 12. What I do on one side, I do on the other. A plus 12 and a negative 12 cancel. So on the left-hand side, this 1.5H will fall down. Put your equal sign. On the right-hand side, 18 minus 12 is 6. All right, so to get H by itself, I get rid of this 1.5. Notice it's touching the H, which means multiply. So the opposite of multiply is divide. I'm going to divide by this coefficient that I don't want, so divide by 1.5. What I do on one side, I do on the other. This 1.5 on top cancels the 1.5 on bottom, so the H falls down. On the other side, 6 divided by 1.5 comes out to be 4. So I know when they're going to be the same height, when they're equal to each other, H is going to be 4. Well, that stands for 4 hours. So it's going to take them burning for 4 hours for them to be the same height. Well, it says at what time will the two candles be the same height? Well, if we start lighting them, so if we lit the candles at 6 p.m. and it took 4 hours, I know they'll be the same height at 10 p.m. One more time. It's going to take 4 hours for them to become the same height after we light them. So 4 hours after we lit them. Well, we lit them at 6 o'clock. So 6 plus 4 gives us 10. All right. Bye, y'all.